The world had been holding its breath for years. The rivalry between the United States and China had escalated beyond the realms of trade wars and diplomatic disputes. It was no longer about economic sanctions, technological competition, or territorial posturing. It was about power. For decades, the two nations had been maneuvering for global dominance, competing in artificial intelligence, military technology, cyber warfare, and space exploration. But now, diplomacy had failed. Tensions that had been building for years finally reached a breaking point. The world had always feared this moment, but no one could stop it. War had begun. It started with a skirmish in the South China Sea, a place that had long been a battleground of influence. The U.S. Navy, conducting a routine freedom of navigation patrol, crossed too close to a Chinese-claimed artificial island. China, having fortified the region with air bases, missile systems, and naval fleets, saw the move as an outright provocation. Fighter jets were scrambled, and within minutes there was a deadly confrontation. A U.S. destroyer fired warning shots. A Chinese jet attempting to intercept crashed into the sea. The pilot was lost. The world held its breath as both nations rushed to issue warnings, but no one backed down. Within hours, the U.S. had mobilized its Pacific Fleet, and China had declared that American aggression would be met with force. The world stood on the edge of catastrophe. Then Taiwan became the tipping point. For decades, China had claimed Taiwan as its own, vowing to take the island by force if necessary. The United States had maintained a policy of strategic ambiguity, neither confirming nor denying whether it would defend Taiwan in the event of an invasion. But when China made its move, ambiguity was no longer an option. On the morning of the invasion, hundreds of Chinese fighter jets roared over Taiwan's skies, dropping precision strikes on key military installations. Thousands of PLA, People's Liberation Army troops stormed the island in an all-out amphibious assault. Warships, drones, and hypersonic missiles rained destruction on Taiwan's defenses, while cyber warfare crippled Taiwanese communication networks. The island fought back fiercely, but it was clear they couldn't hold out alone. Within hours, the United States had to decide: intervene or let Taiwan fall. The decision came quickly. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, stationed in Guam and Japan, launched retaliatory strikes against Chinese warships. F-35 stealth fighters and B-2 bombers took off from American bases, targeting China's air defenses and naval reinforcements. The war had begun. The conflict exploded across multiple battlefronts. In the Pacific, the largest naval war in modern history unfolded. The United States Navy, the most powerful in the world, brought its full force to bear. U.S. Navy strength: aircraft carriers, 11 nuclear-powered, destroyers and frigates, 113, submarines, 68, including 14 nuclear-armed subs. China's plan, People's Liberation Army Navy, strength: aircraft carriers, 3, only 1 fully operational. Destroyers and frigates, 85. Submarines, 79, including 6 nuclear-armed subs. China's Navy had grown rapidly, but it was still no match for the U.S. in open waters. However, China had a home field advantage, using land-based missile systems, cyber warfare, and advanced drones to attack American fleets from a distance. In the skies, dogfights broke out between American F-22 Raptors and Chinese J-20 stealth fighters. The U.S. had a superior air force with more than 13,300 aircraft compared to China's 3,300. But China had the advantage of proximity, launching wave after wave of drones and missile strikes from the mainland. American B-2 stealth bombers targeted Chinese bases deep in the mainland, while China retaliated with hypersonic missile strikes on U.S. bases in Guam and Okinawa. The war was no longer just about Taiwan. It was about supremacy. The U.S. and China were now engaged in an all-out battle for control of the Pacific. Then came the cyber war. China, having invested billions into cyber warfare capabilities, launched massive attacks against U.S. financial systems, power grids, and military infrastructure. Entire cities in the U.S. experienced blackouts, banks shut down, and communication networks collapsed. The U.S. responded with equal force, shutting down China's internet, crashing its stock markets, and crippling its ability to coordinate military operations. Artificial intelligence and autonomous drones fought in the digital shadows, executing attacks in milliseconds. It was a new kind of warfare, one where victory wasn't just measured in firepower, but in who could control the flow of information. Meanwhile, the world was being pulled into the conflict. Allies and enemies began choosing sides. U.S. allies and NATO forces. Japan, South Korea, Australia, UK, France, Germany, Canada, India. NATO would likely support the U.S., especially in Europe. India, seeing a chance to weaken China, may align with the U.S. China's possible allies. Russia, China-Russia military cooperation has increased. North Korea could use the chaos to attack South Korea. Pakistan, historically allied with China, though unpredictable. Iran has strong economic and military ties with China. As the war raged on, economies collapsed worldwide. The global financial system, already strained, buckled under the pressure. Oil prices surged, supply chains broke down, and stock markets crashed. Billions of people were affected, even in nations that had nothing to do with the war. Then came the moment the world had feared most. A Chinese hypersonic missile, moving at speeds too fast for U.S. defenses to intercept, struck an American aircraft carrier, sending it to the bottom of the ocean. In retaliation, the U.S. launched a massive airstrike on a Chinese military base deep within the mainland. Beijing saw this as a direct threat to its sovereignty. China placed its nuclear forces on high alert. The U.S. did the same. The world was now at the brink of total destruction. For days, world leaders scrambled for peace. Russia, the European Union, and the United Nations held emergency meetings. There were desperate calls for ceasefire, for de-escalation, but neither side wanted to be the first to back down. China was determined to prove its dominance. The U.S. was unwilling to let its power fade. The world watched in horror as both superpowers prepared for the final stage of war. The nuclear submarines had already been given their targets. The bombers were in the air. In underground command bunkers, generals weighed the consequences. Would they push the button? Would they launch the first strike? And then it happened. A single missile left its silo. The world held its breath. Would this be the moment humanity destroyed itself? Or would there still be time to stop the unimaginable? The future of civilization hung in the balance.